Welcome to all of you in this distinguished video, in which we will explain about the family tree of one of the greatest personalities that have passed through the history of the earth, Adolf Hitler, who was chilling when hearing his great name. We'll start as usual and move on to great-grandparents to great-grandchildren. Let's dive in. But in the beginning, we must know what the word Hitler means. In short, it is a name that means a noble or majestic wolf. His great-grandfather was Johann Hitler, born the 18th of May, 1725, and died the 11th of October, 1803. He was born in Austria and married Maria Anna Neugeschwanter, who was born in 1727. This couple has left behind 2 children. Let's remember their names. Their first child was Martin Hitler, born the 11th of November, 1762, and died the 10th of January, 1829. The other, Joseph Hitler, was born on March 13, 1765. Now Martin married Anna Maria Joschel Fiedler, born August 23, 1760, died December 7, 1854, and they left 11 children together. Let's get to know them. Was Anton Hitler, the oldest of them and also the birth of the girl Theresia Hitler, born on the 2nd of April, 1787, and died on the 25th of October, 1795. And Joseph Hitler, born on February 10, 1789, in addition to Johann Hitler, born the 10th of February, 1789. Here, the great Johann Georg Hitler was born on the 28th of February, 1792, and died on the 9th of February, 1857. Then Martin Hitler was born on the 12th of October, 1794. Here, Sister Theresia was born on the 11th of February, 1798, and died on the 19th of May, 1876. Lorenz was born on the 6th of July, 1800. Then Maria Anna was born on the 2nd of October, 1802. The penultimate one was Johann Nepomuk, born the 19th of March, 1807, and died the 17th of September, 1888. And last but not least, Barbara was born the 26th of October, 1809. This was a little boring. Brother Johann married Maria, born the 17th of April, 1795, died the 7th of January, 1847. But Maria, 5 years before she met Johann, had a child illegitimately with an unknown person. This child was Alois Schicklgruber, born on June 7, 1837, and died on January 3, 1903. Well, now that we've got to know Adolf Hitler's father and all his great-grandparents, it's time for us to move on to his mother's family. In 1828, Johann Baptist Polzel was born and married Johanna Hitler Polzel, who was born on the 19th of January, 1830, and they had 11 children. Let's take a look at them. Clara Hitler, Johann, Maria, Barbara, Franz, Joseph, Anton, Karl, Maria L., and Theresia. All these people are uncles and aunts of Adolf Hitler. Well, Aunt Theresia, the youngest of her siblings, married Anton Schmidt, who was born on May 30th, 1867, and they succeeded him together. Johann, Maria, Edward, and Anton. The last young man, Anton, married Maria, and they had one child in the 1930s named Schmidt. This is how we got to know the 4 children of his uncle Adolf Hitler and their grandson. Now we go back a bit to Clara, who is naturally the mother of Adolf Hitler. She grew up living next to the farm of her grandfather, Johann Nepomuk Hitler, and where her future husband, Alois Hitler, was raised. It is speculated that her grandfather or his brother was Alois's biological father. She grew up thinking that Alois was her uncle, even though officially they were second cousins, and she never stopped calling him uncle. Well, in order to know how Clara married Alois, we have to explain his previous relationship stories, what happened with them, how he fathered his 8 children, and all these details. Let's go. In 1876, 3 years after Alois married his first wife Anna, he hired 16-year-old Clara as a household servant, and she moved into the top floor of the Braunau Inn, which Alois was renting as his family house. Alois began an affair with 19-year-old Franziska Matzelberger, one of the inn servants, and when Alois and his wife Anna separated in November 1880, Franziska moved in with Alois. Roman Catholic law forbade a divorce, so Franziska and Alois were unable to be married. Jealous of the younger girl, Clara Franziska, Alois fires her, and Clara returns to her family down the street. When Anna died in 1883, Alois married Franziska a month later. Franziska died on August 10, 1884, of a lung disease, after producing 2 children for Alois, Alois Jr. and Angela. And just as quickly, Clara returned to the Alois household to help take care of the children. Alois and Clara were married in their apartment on January 7, 1885. Then, with Alois's characteristic insensitivity to his wives, as soon as the ceremony was over, he went to work. Clara would give birth to 6 children. 5 months after her wedding, Clara gave birth to Gustav. A year later, daughter Ida was born, and a year following that, son Otto was born. Otto died soon after birth. Shortly after Otto's death, diphtheria struck the village, killing Gustav and Ida. On April 20th, 1889, she gave birth to Adolf Hitler, and in 1894, gave birth to son Edmund. Her last child was Paula, born on January 21st, 1896. As Alois was a harsh disciplinarian who had little interest in child rearing, he left Clara to raise the 2 children of his second marriage, Alois Jr. and Angela, along with Adolf, Edmund, and Paula, while he spent his spare time in a local tavern or at his hobby, keeping bees. Later research indicated that he often belittled his wife and children and was verbally abusive of them. In February 1895, Alois bought a small farm in Hayfeld, about 30 miles southwest of Linz, and retired. Alois and his son, Alois Jr., would soon have a major argument, and Alois Jr. left the family, never to return. Son Edmund died of measles a short time later on February 2, 1900. This left his son Adolf as the only male child in the household, with a sister, Paula. Angela had left the family earlier to marry. Soon, Adolf and Alois were at odds with each other. His father tried to browbeat him with following petty rules, and Adolf did everything the opposite of what his father demanded, becoming a romantic, idealistic, and fantasy-oriented youth. Alois. He was an employee of the Austrian customs. On the morning of January 3, 1903, Alois went to the pub as usual to have a glass of wine, began to read the newspapers, and collapsed there. He was taken to an adjoining room and a doctor was brought in. But Alois Hitler died, probably of a pleural effusion, at the age of 65, leaving Clara with his pension and 2 children, Adolf and Paula, to raise. But in 1907, at age 47, Clara died of breast cancer in Linz, Austria, leaving 2 teenagers, Adolf, age 18, and Paula, age 11, to complete their education with her parents. Well, now let's move on to Adolf Hitler's siblings tree. At the beginning, we have to know that Alois had a girl illegitimately from Thekla, Benes Garner, and this daughter was his first child. Theresia, Benes Rami, was born in 1869 and died in 1932. She is married to Johann Raymer. Of course, she gave birth to 5 unknown children, the last of whom is Johann Rami, who also has 5 unknown children. In 1905, Alois moved to London. He married Bridget Dowling in 1909. Their son, William Patrick, was born in Liverpool in 1911. After 4 years of family tensions, Alois split with his family and returned to Austria. Alois was charged with bigamy in Hamburg in 1924. However, his sentence was suspended to 6 months in prison as his wife did not testify. He had a son, Heinrich, from an affair with Hedwig Mickli. His businesses in Germany grew until the Great Depression, after which he occasionally found work until 1934. That year, Alois founded a restaurant under his name in Berlin. Although his half-brother was reigning in Germany at the time, he had no known contact with him. After World War II, Alois changed his surname to Hiller to distance himself from his half-brother's regime. He passed away in Hamburg on the 20th of May, 1956. Alois was like his father because he had his first child illegally, and he was Johannes Theodor. He had him in 1906 and died in 1978. Also, before he died, he was married to Erna August Marie, and he had 1 unknown child with her. As for their sister, Angela, her first husband was Martin Heinrich Hummich, with whom she bore no children. It was her second marriage. Leo Rabel Sr. was an engineer, and she had 3 children with him. The first was Leo. The second one is Jelly Royal, and a third, Elfriede Maria. Nothing is known about the second sister, except for the date of his death, September 18, 1931. The last sister was married to Dr. Ernst Hochger, has 1 child, Heiner Hochger. As we said before, Hitler's brothers, Gustav and Ida, died when their village was bombed, and their brother Otto died shortly after his birth, never seeing anything of his brother's greatness. Brother Edmund, who lived for about 6 years, was unlucky not to be able to build a family tree of his descendants. The sources said that the last daughter of Louis and the younger sister of Adolf Hitler, who lived 64 years despite her long life, did not marry during this time. She was the only sister of Adolf Hitler to survive to adulthood. She was 6 years old when her father died, after which the Austrian government provided Paula and Adolf with a small pension. However, the amount was relatively small, and Adolf, who was by that time old enough to support himself, agreed. Her childhood relationship with her brother has been described as one of constant bickering and intense affection. Paula said she could not convince herself that her brother was responsible for the Holocaust. Of course, she and her brother didn't see each other often, they rarely met, but he didn't forget to send money to her and his half-sister Angela. The nice thing is that 5 months after her death, the federal court in Berchtesgaden issued an inheritance certificate according to which Paula Hitler received 2/3 of Hitler's estate. She died in June 1960. After her death in June 2005, the wooden grave marker and remains were reportedly removed and replaced with another burial, a common practice in German cemeteries 2 decades or more later. In May 2006, it was reported that the grave marker had been returned to Paula's grave and a second marker had been added, indicating another recent burial at the same site. Now is the time to delve into the darkest things about Hitler, from his childhood to his death. At the age of 8, Hitler took singing lessons, sang in the church choir, and even considered becoming a priest. Now, in order to understand why Hitler became so brutal, we must analyze his childhood. I want you to imagine with me when you were a child, you were beaten and humiliated every day by your father. After this, your favorite little brother got sick and died, and you saw him die in front of your eyes, and you couldn't do anything for him. After that, your father, who used to beat you, died. Although you hated him, you would inevitably mourn him at the time of his death. After the death of his father, he left school without any education or clear career plans, but we must know that he loved to play the piano at home. And his main goal was to be a painter. He tried more than once to apply for admission to the Academy of Arts, but he was always rejected. At this time, Hitler's mother, Clara, fell ill with cancer. Hitler now did not want anything from this world except for his mother to recover from this cruel disease. So Hitler became the head of the house at the age of 16. The doctor who was going to his sponsor, Hitler's mother, at home said that Hitler had stopped taking piano lessons at home so as not to disturb her, and that Adolf's interest in his mother had impressed him. At the end of November, when Clara's health suddenly declined, Adolf put his bed in her room and began to take care of her, reading her stories that she liked, drawing pictures of her, and holding her hand for hours. The doctor said that Hitler was the one who cleaned the floor, did the laundry, cooked the meals, and took care of his little sister Paula all that time. After the death of his mother, the doctor said, "I have never seen a child so depressed and broken after his mother's separation." In December 1909, the money his father had left them ran out and he was forced to live in homeless shelters, moving from one country hostile to another. Then he lived in a general men's dormitory until 1913. Earning money as a temporary laborer and selling his paintings and postcards of the views of Vienna, with little success. A monster responsible for the death of millions of mothers, millions of fathers, and millions of children. So when will his fate change? But is this why Hitler became a monster? In any case, we will not deny that his childhood influenced his future in this way. But there are many kids who went through the same thing, and more than Hitler went through, and didn't become so brutal. But perhaps they did not become monsters because opportunities for power did not meet them. The simple analysis is, if we add up to 1,000 people who have suffered in their lives, we will be able to pick up at least one of them with the name Hitler. Perhaps this is what happened in real life, and the world came to us with one of those who do not have mercy on us after the world was harsh on them. How did Hitler get to office? On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by German President Paul von Hindenburg. There are 2 things you should know. Hitler did not seize power through a coup, nor was Hitler directly elected to power. Hitler joined the Nazi Party in October 1919. He helped set the party's political program in 1920. The program was based on anti-Semitism, expansionist nationalism, and anti-immigration. By 1921, Hitler had sole leadership of the Nazi Party to bear the title of Führer. Hitler was very skilled at developing his position, and that's what got him there. But was Hitler really paranoid? I will tell you in response with a few simple words. Adolf Hitler is the greatest example of megalomania. Now let's talk about Hitler's private tree. In general, there is a group of evidence that confirms that Hitler had relationships with a number of women during his life, but there is no evidence of sexual encounters that Hitler carried out throughout his life. And despite that, it is alleged that 2 of his mistresses had committed suicide for some reason. But we will talk about his 3 notable relationships, and we will start with his first relationship with Geli Raubal, the daughter of his sister Angela Raubal. In short, Hitler was jealous of her. He routinely forbade her to wear certain types of clothing or social contact without his permission. One day, she was offered a groom, and she and her father agreed with the groom, but Hitler refused. And this made Geli Raubal shoot herself with Hitler's pistol. Meanwhile, Hitler was so upset by the accusations and blamed him that he briefly considered leaving office altogether. Of course, she didn't have any children with Hitler, for his second relationship with the British girl Unity Mitford, who are her father, soldier David Freeman Mitford and Maha Sidney Bowles. Hitler first saw her on a rally, and the 2 fell in love. Then she began going to the restaurant for several months where Hitler dined, and eventually Hitler invited her to his table. She would accompany him to diplomatic events, including the 1936 Summer Olympics. Hitler's relationship with Mitford came to an abrupt end when World War II began. Mitford begged Hitler not to go to war with her homeland, and when Hitler started the war, she attempted suicide with a gun she had taken from Hitler after promising to use it only for self-defense. Unlike Raubal, Mitford survived her suicide attempt and was taken to a nearby hospital. Distraught, Hitler promises to fund her medical expenses and schedule a visit to her immediately. After learning that her wound had permanently infected her brain, he arranged for the unit to be transported across enemy lines and back to England, where she spent the rest of her days caring for her estranged family, until she died 9 years later. The illness was meningitis caused by a bullet in his brain. Now it is the turn to talk about his last love and his only marriage. She is Eva Braun. But who are her grandparents? Her grandfather was Philip Braun, who married Christina Heiser Braun. They had 2 children together, Johanna Braun and Friedrich Otto Wilhelm Braun. Friedrich married Franziska. They had 2 children, Ilse and Eva Anna Paula. Eva became acquainted with Hitler, and they secretly married. The thing that prompted him to marry Eva just because she is not interested in politics, he wants a mother at home who cooks and cleans and does not interfere with his work. Hitler would sometimes leave her for a long time. When Hitler began to fail to make time for her, the 2 began a long argument that usually ended with Braun crying and Hitler screaming. Eva Braun was Adolf Hitler's secret mistress for more than 13 years. Eva Braun did not become a public figure until after her death. These 2 lovers have been through most of it all, which eventually made Hitler take cyanide and shoot himself. After this, Eva decided to follow him. Well, but where was Hitler buried? And in the autopsy report, it was written that there was destruction in Hitler's skull caused by a bullet, in addition to pieces of glass in his chin. And the remains of the 2 bodies were buried and removed several times by the counterintelligence unit during the unit's move from Berlin to a new facility in Magdeburg where they were completely buried. Well now, are there descendants from this family in our time? One thing I should add is that Hitler's family didn't want to have children because Hitler didn't want them. Perhaps he agreed with them that he wanted to end his series. Perhaps that is why Hitler wants to be like the one who came and not be repeated. In addition, Hitler wrote in his autobiography that he did not want to have children, and that he feared that men who preferred stability, marriage, and family formation would lose interest in other women. But according to some sources, there are people of his descendants, let's call them, after Hitler's nephew moved to America in 1930 illegally. He married Phyllis, and he had 4 children. The first was Alexandra, his younger brother was Louis, the third was Howard, and the last was Baron. And these, of course, are their changed names. They basically had their original names, but changed them for the purpose of disguise. They even changed their last name from Hitler to Heller. One day, their brother, Howard Stewart, was involved in an accident with his mother and 3 brothers, when an oncoming car crossed the center line and collided with his car from the front. Everyone survived this accident except for Howard, who was 32 years old and died. When the New York Times tried to speak to them, they refused, and no one was able to write to them. And this is all about Angela's descendants. But it is inconceivable that Hitler throughout his life did not have children. Well, there's a kid who claims to have separated him from his class, and that's Jean-Marie Lauré. Let's explain the story. Hitler's servant Heinz Ling had heard him confess over and over again that he had a child, but all these statements remained assumptions and speculation until Jean-Marie Lauré appeared, who introduced himself as Hitler's illegitimate son, from his mother, whom she calls Charlotte. It is mentioned that Charlotte confessed her relationship with Hitler when she was 16 years old, and he said, based on her confessions, that she met him at the Soldiers' Rest in a small village when he was a simple soldier in the German army, and that Jean-Marie Lauré was born shortly after the beginning of the relationship between Charlotte and Hitler, March 1918. In 1981, Lauré published his autobiography entitled Your Father's Name, Hitler, in which he described his feelings and emotions that he experienced after knowing his father's identity, and claimed that Hitler knew of his existence and that he tried to destroy all evidence indicating a relationship with Charlotte. And here I shall have fulfilled my mission and mentioned every person born into the family of Hitler. Although there is no evidence for these rumors that the family agreed to end the Hitler family lineage, all of Hitler's relatives have not yet had any children, the eldest of whom is 88 years old. That was it. Do not forget to support us so that we can continue to publish more for you. Thank you and goodbye.